Imagine for a second that you are, an elite world-class athlete.
Right.
You've dedicated your entire life to mastering this incredibly brutal, unforgiving craft. You step into a cage, you literally bleed for a living, and, you put your physical health on the line in front of millions of people.
It's an intense way to make a living.
Yeah, exactly. And then one day you have this sudden, jarring realization. You discover that you can make exponentially more money and gain way more fame, not by risking your life in combat, but by simply posting a video of yourself sitting in a car eating a fast food burger.
Right. It completely shatters how we usually think about hard work, doesn't it?
Totally. So today, welcome to this deep dive. We are looking at the wildlife of UFC rising star Arman Tsarukyan, really trying to understand this fundamental shift in our economy. What happens when blood and sweat pay pennies, but lifestyle and attention pay millions?
Yeah, and it's a reality that challenges everything we're taught. I mean, we're conditioned from a young age to believe that the bloodier the sacrifice, the bigger the payout.
Right. The harder you work, the richer you get.
Exactly. But we are living in this moment where human attention is, frankly, the most valuable currency on the planet.
Yeah.
And capturing it doesn't always require suffering.
No, it really doesn't. And just a quick overview for you listening, we're pulling from an extensive, incredibly candid interview with Arman to explore this. And to be clear, this isn't just about mixed martial arts.
No, definitely not.
If you don't care about MMA, stick around because the cage is really just the backdrop here. We're getting into the intersection of the digital attention economy, the kind of brutal physical grit that literally rewires a human brain, the inner workings of the UFC business machine, and some honestly stark economic differences between international sports programs.
It's a huge cross-section of topics.
It really is. So let's start by looking at this accidental influencer moment. Arman had what he described as a literal light bulb realization. He fights this grueling, high-stakes match in the octagon. And, we know the drill months of training, the severe weight cut, the actual physical damage of the fight.
The whole ordeal.
Yeah. He wins, he posts a celebratory photo online, and gets about 40,000 likes on social media.
Which, is a solid metric for a professional fighter.
Yeah.
It shows he has dedicated fan engagement.
Oh, for sure. It's a completely respectable number. But then a little while later, he posts this casual, totally unproduced video of himself just eating an In-N-Out burger.
Just a burger.
Just a burger. No blood, no sweat, just a guy enjoying a double-double. And that video goes insanely viral. He gets 250,000 likes. It reaches tens of millions of views. The audience was basically voting with their eyeballs.
And that data point completely changed his financial trajectory. I mean, he looked at that massive discrepancy, 40,000 units of attention for literally risking brain damage versus 250,000 for eating a cheeseburger, and realized the market was telling him exactly what it valued most.
Yeah.
People didn't just want the violence, right? They wanted the lifestyle on the other side of the violence.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I look at this through the lens of an engine and a vehicle. Think of it like this. He realized that fighting is just the engine.
Right.
An engine is ugly, it's covered in grease, it's full of these tiny violent explosions, and it generally stays hidden under the hood. But it's the thing that makes the sleek, glossy exterior of the car move forward.
That's a great way to put it.
Right.
Yeah.
So his social media presence, the lifestyle, the yachts, that's the vehicle. If he stops fighting, the engine dies, and the yacht videos stop getting views.
Exactly.
But the fighting alone isn't what people are staring at when the car drives by. And man, the financial pivot here is just staggering. He goes from making around $500,000 a year from one brand sponsorship.
Which is still a lot of money.
It is. But he goes from that to projecting approximately $3 million a month in sponsorship money. $3 million a month.
What's fascinating here is how this perfectly illustrates the mechanics of the modern attention economy. But, to really understand why brands throw that kind of money at him, you have to look at his content strategy. He claims it's completely organic.
Right.
He specifically notes that he doesn't sit down with a whiteboard and script out these crazy stunts. He isn't doing Mr. Beast-style giveaways to artificially inflate his numbers.
I have to push back on that a little, though.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you say unforced, but the guy explicitly mentions paying a full-time videographer to just follow him around on private jets, yachts, and to high-end restaurants. How is having a literal camera crew documenting your wealth not a highly produced stunt?
Well, that is the crucial nuance of modern digital marketing. There's a massive difference between aesthetic documentation and a scripted influencer stunt.
Okay, how so?
When you script a prank or like a forced viral moment, the audience's defense mechanisms go up immediately. They know they're being marketed to.
Right, it feels fake.
Exactly. But what Arman is doing is capturing a sustained reality, albeit a highly curated, very aspirational one. He has an estimated monthly lifestyle burn rate of around $500,000. He really is living on those yachts and flying on those jets.
So the camera guy is just there.
Right. The videographer is just capturing it aesthetically. People today have a highly attuned radar for inauthenticity. So by just casually inviting the audience to observe a glamorous life that he is actually living, they buy into the persona, not a gimmick.
That makes sense. But, you know, it's easy to look at a guy eating a burger on a yacht, spending $500,000 a month and think, well, he's soft.
Oh, absolutely.
You'd assume he's just another pampered influencer who got lucky.
Mm.
But to understand why this sudden fame and unimaginable wealth hasn't completely ruined him or made him lazy, you really have to look at what his nervous system was put through as a child.
Yeah, his origin story is the absolute antithesis of the influencer lifestyle.
It really is.
The contrast is jarring. You just can't sustain that kind of empire without an incredibly dense foundation of discipline. And his foundation was poured in, honestly, one of the most unforgiving environments possible.
Let's look at those early years. So he grows up in Khabarovsk, Russia. For context, this is out in the Russian Far East, practically next to China, and it is notoriously freezing.
Right. Very harsh climate.
Yeah. And from ages 6 to 9, he's wrestling. But he absolutely hated it. And the interesting detail here isn't that he hated the physical combat. He hated the extreme weight cutting.
Which is wild for a kid. We have to pause and think about the physical and psychological mechanics of that.
Yeah, break that down.
Extreme weight cutting in combat sports involves severe dehydration, wearing plastic sweatsuits, sitting in saunas until your body literally stops sweating and just starving yourself.
At 8 years old.
Exactly. To impose that process on an 8-year-old growing child is a level of developmental stress that alters a person's relationship with comfort permanently. You are teaching a child to override their most primal survival instincts, hunger and thirst for a plastic trophy. It's really no wonder it broke him, at least temporarily.
It sounds like borderline torture, to be honest.
Yeah.
So he walks away from the mats and pivots to hockey.
Right.
From ages 10 to 17, he's out on the ice, playing professionally for his age bracket, dreaming of the NHL. His dad even offers to send him to North America to train.
But then he stops.
Yeah, by 17, he makes this highly analytical decision. He realizes he started too late to reach the absolute pinnacle of the sport. He doesn't want to just be a guy on a roster, you know? He wants to be the best in the world.
So he goes back to what he knows.
Exactly. He goes back to combat sports, he switches to grappling, and becomes a Russian champion in a single year.
Which, by the way, is an incredible testament to the latent muscle memory he built during those agonizing childhood wrestling sessions. The body remembers the leverage, the balance, the neurological pathways.
But then his transition to MMA is almost comical.
How so?
He doesn't have some deep, burning cinematic desire to be a mixed martial artist.
Yeah.
He literally tells his parents he just wants to try it one time because he thought the walkout music and the crowds looked cool.
Just for the music. That's hilarious.
Yeah. His mom is terrified he's going to get brain damage, but he does it anyway, and he wins his first fight. But that initial success kind of sets him up for a catastrophic, humiliating failure.
Oh, because the fight game doesn't reward unearned confidence for very long.
Precisely. Because of that first win, he immediately gets matched up against a guy who already has double-digit professional fights.
Uh-oh.
Arman has no real striking coach, no nuanced experience, just raw arrogance. He steps into the cage, the bell rings, and he gets knocked completely unconscious in 15 seconds.
Wow, 15 seconds.
Yeah. And his father looks at him afterward and essentially says, "I told you so. This isn't your thing. Quit."
If we break down the psychology of this moment, it's really the defining inflection point of his life.
How do you mean?
Well, retreating is the natural human survival instinct, right? When you experience public trauma, physical failure, and parental validation of that failure, the brain's immediate response is to seek safety and never touch a hot stove again.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about the last time you, listening to this, failed publicly. Maybe you bombed a presentation at work or completely botched an important interview. Your instinct is probably to hide under your desk, or at least avoid thinking about it for a month.
Sure. Just vanish.
Arman's instinct was the exact opposite. He asks his dad for 1 year to prove himself. He gets on YouTube, searches for training camps, finds Tiger Muay Thai, and buys a one-way ticket to Thailand.
Completely alone.
Completely alone.
It is a form of self-directed extreme immersion therapy. He didn't even know how professional fighters pace themselves, so he just didn't pace himself.
Yeah, the schedule he kept was insane.
The source details it. Jiu-jitsu from 9 to 11, MMA from 12 to 2, hard sparring from 5 to 6.
Yeah.
Every single day, except Sunday.
That's absurd.
The sheer physical toll of doing that in the humidity of Thailand, constantly breaking down muscle tissue, constantly flooding the nervous system with cortisol from sparring veterans, it's irrational.
Yeah.
But that level of obsessive, irrational response to failure is a precise mechanism that separates the top 1% of elite athletes from the rest of the pack. He basically rewired his trauma through exhaustion.
And it pays off exactly 1 year later to the day. He flies back to Russia, demands a rematch with the exact same guy who knocked him out in 15 seconds and chokes him unconscious.
Unbelievable.
It's the ultimate proof of concept for his work ethic. But that relentless drive didn't just rebuild his physical durability, right? It evolved into this highly analytical philosophy that dictates how he fights in the UFC today.
The source material provides a brilliant contrast here between Arman and his occasional training partner, Khamzat Chimaev. If you want to understand two entirely different psychological approaches to elite combat, you just look at these two.
Yeah, we talked about the engine and the vehicle earlier, but in the cage, it's like comparing a bulldozer to a supercomputer.
Right.
You have Khamzat, who is notorious for pushing his body past the breaking point. He actually has a history of overtraining to the point of severe illness and injury. But when it comes to strategy, it's like Khamzat is playing solitaire, only looking at his own cards.
Yeah.
The source notes he literally never watches tape of his opponents.
Never.
Never. He steps into the cage relying entirely on his ability to physically break the other human being.
Yeah.
It's pure athletic imposition.
Whereas Arman's approach, like you said, is like playing a highly specific game of chess against his opponent. It's deeply analytical. He isn't just training to be tough. He's programming his nervous system. He obsessively studies tape. He's parsing out micro movements, like how an opponent shifts their weight on their lead foot before throwing a hook, or their exact posture when they shoot for a takedown. He then takes that data into the gym and drills specific counters until the reaction requires zero conscious thought.
Though he does mention he's starting to pull back slightly, letting his coaches do more of the heavy tape study lifting now, because he was starting to suffer from paralysis by analysis. He was overthinking it.
That makes sense.
But that initial analytical caution was hard-earned. We all know what stepping into the cage with Islam Makhachev means.
Oh, absolutely.
For the uninitiated, Islam is widely regarded as an absolute wood chipper. He just destroys people. And Arman gets a call to join the UFC on 2 weeks' notice to fight him.
Trial by fire.
Yeah, and Arman is riding a 13-fight win streak, feeling invincible, so he takes a fight without a second thought. He actually goes the distance, which against Islam is a massive achievement, but he loses. And the lesson he took from that loss wasn't about a lack of physical skill. It was about the danger of arrogance. He realized that no matter how good your engine is, the variables in a cage fight can still ruin you.
Which brings us to how he navigates the business politics of the UFC, which is fascinating. The UFC is infamous for bitter, drawn-out contract disputes. The biggest stars in the sport constantly clash with the promotion over money.
Always.
The source points out that John Jones, arguably the greatest of all time, was reportedly demanding $15 million for a fight, completely stalling the heavyweight division.
There's just always this intense friction over compensation. But Arman's approach to the UFC brass is entirely different. He positions himself as the easiest guy in the room.
Right.
He says he has only ever turned down one single fight in his career, and that was purely on principle because he was the #1 contender and they tried to offer him the number 10 guy. Aside from that, he just signs the contract. He doesn't aggressively negotiate the finer details of his standard payouts.
That's so rare.
And here is the craziest part of the entire interview. Despite the fact that he is pulling in millions of dollars a month on social media, he is so desperately focused on winning the 155-pound UFC championship that he explicitly states he would fight the current champion, Ilia Topuria, for absolutely free, $0 from the promotion.
This raises an important question, and it's really the crux of his entire economic strategy. Why would a guy who makes $3 million a month on Instagram, a guy who actively complains about his $500,000 monthly overhead, willingly step into a locked cage to endure profound physical trauma for free?
I mean, if you look at it purely as an hourly wage, it seems completely insane.
On the surface, it makes no sense. But in the digital attention economy, the championship belt isn't just a piece of metal and leather.
Right.
It's the ultimate status symbol. It is the catalyst that acts as a multiplier for every single outside revenue stream he possesses. If he gets that belt, his social media following goes from a few million to 10 million.
Wow, yeah.
His $3 million a month in sponsorships turns into 10 million a month. His leverage in real estate deals and business partnerships skyrockets. He understands that fighting for free isn't working for free. It's simply a customer acquisition cost for his lifestyle brand. The UFC title is the most powerful marketing asset in the world for an influencer who sells toughness.
I love that framing. It's a loss leader. He's playing a completely different economic game than the guys arguing over an extra 50 grand on their show money.
Exactly.
And this highly pragmatic view on money and status is deeply tied to the geoeconomics of sports, specifically the structural contrast between how athletes operate in the United States versus Russia.
Yet the structural differences dictate entirely different survival strategies for these athletes.
So what does this all mean? I need to make sure I fully grasp this dynamic. Let's look at the Olympic payout systems as a proxy for how these countries treat sports. In the U.S., if you win a gold medal, the Olympic Committee might give you a one-time cash bonus of maybe $37,000. But by and large, you are left to fend for yourself. You have to go into the free market, find private sponsors, start a podcast, or put up a GoFundMe just to pay for your training equipment.
Right. It is a hyper-individualistic, sink-or-swim capitalist model. The U.S. treats its athletes essentially like startup founders.
Right. But then the source details the Russian system. If you win an Olympic medal in Russia or achieve a high level of national athletic success, the state provides you with a lifetime monthly salary.
A lifetime salary.
We're talking up to $3,000 or $4,000 a month for repeat winners, paid out every single month for the rest of your life.
Wait, so if you win gold at 22, the Russian government is essentially paying your rent until you're 80?
Exactly. But it goes beyond just the monthly stipend. The Russian government frequently gifts luxury cars and high-end apartments directly to their top athletes.
That's wild. And the source impartially notes that the Russian state heavily subsidizes athletic infrastructure too, pointing out the fact that Vladimir Putin directly helped Khabib Nurmagomedov build his own training facility in Dagestan.
So they're deeply involved.
Yes. Russia treats its elite athletes more like elite military assets. Their athletic supremacy is viewed as a matter of national prestige, a projection of state power, and therefore, the state funds them accordingly.
So the U.S. system demands marketability, while the Russian system rewards national service. In the United States, if you can't capture the public's attention, you don't eat, which explains exactly why Arman mastered the social media game so aggressively.
Right.
He learned how to monetize American hypercapitalism. But he also benefits from the deep structural support of his homeland. He is in this incredibly rare position where he is simultaneously leveraging the American free market attention economy and the Russian state-sponsored prestige system.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the duality influences exactly how and where he deploys his wealth. He points out fascinating cultural differences regarding safety and capital.
Like what?
Well, he notes that he feels Russia is much safer for wealthy individuals to exist in public. He mentions that you don't have to walk around constantly worried about someone ripping a luxury watch off your wrist, because the legal consequences for that kind of crime there are so immediate and severe.
And that localized sense of security directly impacts where he parks his millions.
Exactly.
He invests heavily in Russian real estate. He partners with his father, who has a long background in the construction business. And the math is fascinating. He explains that the return on investment for real estate in Russia takes only 8 to 10 years, compared to what he estimates would take 20 years in the U.S. market.
That's a huge difference.
It is. The U.S. market is saturated. The Russian market, especially with inside familial connections and capital, moves much faster for him.
Yeah, he has the liquid capital of a global American influencer, but he is deploying it in an environment where he has deep family expertise, cultural fluency, and a significantly faster economic return.
And speaking of his family, the dynamic between him and his dad is just fantastic. Despite Arman's incredibly flashy lifestyle, the yachts, the private jets, the designer clothes we see on Instagram, his dad is incredibly frugal.
Oh, totally.
He doesn't care about Rolexes. He doesn't care about the luxury cars. He just works hard in construction.
Mm.
And Arman respects that deeply. He explicitly states he takes his relentless work ethic from his dad and his athletic discipline from his mom.
It's the anchor that keeps the yacht from drifting away, so to speak. The wealth hasn't eroded the core values he was raised with.
It totally anchors him. He talks about wanting a massive family. He specifically mentions wanting 11 kids.
11?
Yeah. And underneath all the viral burger videos and the multi-million-dollar sponsorships, his ultimate driving force is deeply rooted in his heritage. He is Armenian by blood, though he grew up in Russia, and his ultimate goal is the historical pride of becoming the very first Armenian UFC champion.
If you look at his entire story, Arman Tsarukyan is a fascinating study and synthesis. He has taken the grueling, unforgiving physical discipline of a Russian sports upbringing, combined it with the deep, proud, familial heritage of his Armenian roots, and then weaponized all of it using the hyper-capitalist marketing savvy of the American attention economy.
He really is a master synthesizer. He built the bloody, violent engine in the freezing cold of Khabarovsk and the isolated, humid gyms of Thailand, but he built the sleek, multi-million-dollar vehicle on Instagram and YouTube.
Yeah, and he proves that in the modern era, being the absolute best in the world at a physical skill is no longer enough to generate true generational wealth. You have to be equally skilled at capturing, holding, and monetizing human attention.
Which brings us right back to where we started.
Yeah.
We've entered an era where an elite fighter, a guy capable of surviving the most brutal physical combat on Earth, can make vastly more money from a 15-second video of himself eating a fast food burger than he can from a 15-minute bloody battle in a locked cage.
It's a wild thought.
And it leaves you with a really provocative thought to ponder as you scroll through your feeds this week. Are we approaching a future where professional sports are no longer the main event? Will the actual games, the matches, and the fights eventually become merely an extreme, high-stakes advertisement for an athlete's personal lifestyle brand?
When the burger pays exponentially more than the blood, you have to fundamentally question what the true product actually is.
That is the perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you. Look closely for the hidden engines driving the glossy vehicles we see online, and we will catch you next time.